By the year 2010, half the population of the planet would live in cities. This one is capital of what was once the greatest empire the world has ever seen.
Look at that! The moon, the river, the whole place laid out in front of me.
It's played many roles through its history, but what really lies behind the well-known face of London? During the course of a typical 24 hours, I intend to try and get an overview of this extraordinary place. I want to discover how history still courses through its streets. I want to get immersed in its living traditions. And by meeting her people, I want to understand why they love the great and sprawling metropolis that is London town. Westminster, an hour before dawn. You never know what you're going to find in a big city. The bigger they are, the more you turn up the unexpected. And London is a monster. It's 4 in the morning, and I'm in the middle of a city of 7.5 million people. And at this moment, about 7 million of them are fast asleep all around me. And I hope they stay that way. It's one of the miracles of urban life. But I've come here to Trafalgar Square because there's something here that's very significant for London. There's a statue, and I don't mean Nelson. It's a statue of Charles I on a lonely island on the south side of the square. And this must be it. Well, well. This statue is the official centre of the metropolis.
That's where all the distances in London are measured from. When it says 15 miles to London, they mean 15 miles to here. But is it really the centre of London?
Because in fact, there are many different centres to this town, and one of the things I want to do is identify them. As this 600 square mile living organism is about to wake up. Every day before 8 a.m, enough bread is delivered across London to fill the festival hall to the roof twice over. Before the day is through, about 2,000 tons of meat will have been consumed, enough to carpet the Albert Hall more than 12 times. Most of that meat comes through Smithfield Market in the dead of night. This labour is just coming to an end, but for others, the day is about to start. Martin Davey is going to take me to work via a particularly ancient centre.
Morning. Aren't you cold?
Yeah, a little bit. Should I go off this way?
We're now just over a mile from where I started in Trafalgar Square, but hidden in the wall of a disused shop on Cannon Street is a strange piece of stone with its own legends attached.
Oh, that's mysterious. Look at that.
Well, there we are, the London Stone.
It's supposed to be Roman or something.
Yeah, that's right. It's meant to be Roman, and it's the Stone of Brutus. And as long as the Stone of Brutus is safe,
yeah,
London will flourish.
I
So
suppose.
the myth goes, anyway.
They haven't really displayed it very effectively, have
No,
they?
it's a shame, really.
The London Stone is reputed to have stood right in the middle of the Forum when the Romans were here. It survived the Great Fire and weathered the Blitz. Now, stuck in a cage on Cannon Street, it sits, sadly forgotten.
Here you are. Welcome to our site.
Martin
After you.
works here, and this is his perch. He's going to take me up his crane 200 feet to watch the sunrise.
Why do I always get these jobs? All right, OK.
All right, where you go?
Yeah.
I want to see how much its Roman origin, marked by that nearby stone, has shaped the city today. Or do I? It's a long way up, and even further down.
Straight on?
Yep, where you go?
It's fantastic.
Incredible view, isn't it? Got Tower Bridge over there.
Yeah, oh, those are the two towers.
And then Canary Wharf, see coming through the mist.
Yeah. London looks
Incredible.
from up here. It's just
Incredible.
a fantastic city, isn't it?
Just gently engage the dead man, make sure it's down. And there you go, you're moving. You're now a crane driver.
2,000 years of history and this town just can't stop growing. In the 1 square mile surrounding this crane, there are currently 88 construction sites.
We're about as close as we can be to the centre of the original city of London, Londinium. Essentially, the entire structure of London is based upon that Roman settlement. Because every time they added more roads, they went out in a sort of concentric circle. And London grew like the most enormous spider's web.
And we still follow that complicated pattern started by the Romans. It's a recipe for chaos.
Sort of walking out over space. What are we now? We're about 7:30.
It's just starting. Look, they're all ready to go to work.
Just about now, everybody over there decides they want to be over there, everybody over there decides they want to be over there, and everybody over there wants to be over there. And one of the biggest rush hours in the world commences. 25 million separate journeys every day.
In the 15 minutes leading up to 9 o'clock, 200,000 people are crammed into London's underground. 8,000 buses ferry people around London's 2,000 miles of streets. In fact, just to earn a living, the average commuter travels the equivalent of 2.5 times around the planet. I've got to get to my next appointment. Luckily, I know a shortcut that used to be crammed with traffic, but which today is virtually empty. It's called the Thames.
Welcome on board.
Thank you very
One
much.
hand at all times, please.
Yep.
The Port of London Authority patrols 24 hours a day. They're there to keep the tidal river safe
Wonderful.
and to give me a jolly.
You like the river, don't you?
I love it. I just think it's just the most fantastic way. And we think it's because of the river that London's here.
Yes.
At one time, the Thames would have been crammed with trading ships from all over the world. The fortunes of this town and this country were founded here. Now, it's a deserted avenue of water.
It's quite impossible, actually, to come into London now and to see that vision. Not feel like, not feel like Admiral Nelson, making your way up the Thames. I feel like I should if it was an old sort of, an old film with Jack Hawkins in now, there'd be a sort of dum-dum, dum-da-da-da-da-dum playing, just to give us a little bit of a sort of fillip, just to lift us up.
So, it's 9:30 and I find myself in another centre of London.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Though as far as the people who work here are concerned, it's the centre of the universe. About 1,000 years ago, someone picked Westminster as the place from which to rule England and ultimately the British Empire. It's as familiar as a policeman's helmet and actually just as peculiar. To help me in, Joe Murphy. Joe works here as political editor for the Evening Standard, feeding this town's appetite for gossip. London still has an evening paper. Paris and New York can't be bothered anymore.
This would have been much more interesting 400 years ago because you'd have seen Oliver Cromwell's head on a pike just above where we're standing now.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed that. This is spectacular. Where are we now?
We're in Westminster Hall, and the roof you're looking at is 600 years old.
So it looks Victorian on the outside, but in fact it's built around something which is genuinely old.
This has been here for 900 years, and the roof, when it was built, would have been a miracle. It did away with pillars. People would have come in here and thought this was the most extraordinary building they'd seen in their lives.
And it's still pretty eye-popping. Palace was built here because Westminster was originally an island, formed where the River Tyburn joined the Thames. The river may have gone underground, but a lot of medieval customs still survive.
My job as a lobby correspondent just basically means I'm allowed to talk to MPs as they come past. I'm not allowed to run after them. I'm not allowed to shout for them to come over to me. I have to think ahead and plant myself where they might come across me.
So it's all got to be done on a sort of sly, casual, hello, fancy seeing you here type sort of thing.
Those are the rules which are designed to put journalists in their proper place, which is as observers of parliamentarians and not as participants.
It's now 10:26 and 30 seconds.
Speaker!
And a precisely timed ritual is taking place. It's common in London for lawyers, soldiers, aldermen, and the staff of the House of Commons to assert their authority by wearing clothes that went out of fashion over 100 years ago.
What came past was totally like a cartoon out of Punch.
More than any other city in the world, London likes to keep one buckled foot in the past.
You'd pay good money for that, wouldn't you?
But even the most familiar symbols of London have their hidden workings. Joe has access to all areas. The chimes of Big Ben are transmitted live to 183 million listeners across the globe. It's rather disconcerting to find that the mechanism is not much more technically advanced than a clockwork mouse. It has to be wound by hand, without fail, 3 times a week.
I said when I arrived here that this was the centre of London. So what is the centre that we see from here?
You think a collection of palaces, banqueting houses, turned into a seat of power.
Even a house. Our Prime Minister lives in an ordinary terraced house, but he is surrounded by all sorts of other higgledy-piggledy accommodation. No.
In Washington, politics are hidden behind fences and manicured gardens. In Peking, they're stuck behind a wall. Here, government is a spectator sport. Ministers, secretaries, and all their underlings scuttle about this town just like the rest of us. A few yards up the street, I can move seamlessly into yet another centre. And this one is royal. The kings and queens of Britain have a long history of swanning about their capital city. London today still owes a lot to that, particularly in its green spaces.
This whole St James's Park was once the private property of the king. Charles II used to stroll about with his mistresses here, and if it was hot, they'd go for a quick dip in the canal. I suppose by then they got rid of the crocodiles. James I liked to keep 2 crocodiles here, although we can still see the pelicans, which were a gift from the Russian ambassador in 1664. Obviously not the same pelicans, just their descendants.
And not the same royal family either, just their descendants. This entire area was once reserved for royal deer hunting. It's these ex-private grounds that now form London's parks. Nearly 8,000 acres of open land. They help earn London's official classification as a forest. Anyone can still take a horse into Hyde Park, even if, like me, they can't actually ride the thing. Personally, I'd feel happier with a handbrake and some indicators, but I'm told it's a great form of exercise.
Tokyo, largest urban agglomeration in the world. Its population exceeds that of Canada, and that's not counting the millions of workers who flock in every morning. everything here is based on public transit.
Everybody has to go through Shinjuku to go to work, or to pass through Tokyo to go to northern regions or to the south to Osaka, for example.
Space in Tokyo is scarce and precious. And every idea to make more with less is welcome with open arms.
1.5 meters by 1.5 meters. Much larger than a coffin.
Mais c'est parfait pour moi.
Capital of a country that was closed to the world for more than 300 years, it evolved away from Western influences. Early on, it created its own unique culture, which still defines it today.
Back around the time George Washington was getting elected president, Japan had a completely thriving publishing industry, a performing arts industry, a book industry.
Tokyo is bustling, day and night. And more than New York, this is
Tokyo. It was a very important city in the mid-1700s.
We estimate that the city was the largest city in the world in terms of population. And Tokyo was the capital of Japan that has decided to isolate from the rest of the world.
What's very unique is that Japan decided to close itself off from the rest of the world.
Yes, the ports were banned. The foreign merchants were banned in Japan, except Dutch people that were authorized in the west of Japan. And it was very, very controlled. And the country went on like that during 300 years until the Commodore Perry float arrived and forced the country to open to international commerce.
How could an American expedition forced Tokyo to open itself to the world?
I think it was happening in the 19th century. The Commodore arrived with the black ships. The idea was very simple. Either Japan should open to the world, or they would be facing the risk of a war with the rest of the world. And to support the assumption, Commodore Perry bombed one of the small towns in Japan. And of course, Japanese military forces were totally unable to oppose anything to these modern weapons. And following year, when Commodore Perry returned to get the answer from the shogun, whether they would agree or not to open the country, of course, the country accepted to foreign commerce.
And you can't help it if Japan is not populated by immigrants. 98% of the population of Japan is Japanese.
Definitely, it's not a country where immigration has been massive or important or encouraged. Having no external push for change made that, and that's probably unique in this sense in Japan, that all changes were made internally by a society that recreated a diversity inside Japan. So Japan was isolated, but between north and south of Japan, the languages, the culture, the food references are different. But that's very interesting to see that maybe humans need some diversities after all. And that's the case also in Tokyo, where you will find people coming from those different regions in Japan and living in the city.
In Tokyo, there's a strong sense of responsibility and hierarchy in the workplace.
Yes, I think people want to have the things done right. Many things in Japan are codified, they are organized. They do the things as they should be done. And that's true in the work life particularly. But of course, the human relationship after that are also very important. And the relationship between superiors and people in teams are very personal relationship.
And here it gets all mixed up because after work, all the colleagues, sometimes the boss, they go out together and they spend a lot of after hours fraternizing.
Well, after hard work, you need to spend some time together to know each other and work better in having a stronger relationship inside the company. Personal relationship is important.
Is work more important than family?
Well, I think they emphasize a lot of importance on everything. What is true is that, of course, the work is taking a huge part of the time for both genders. It doesn't facilitate, of course, the family life.
Do you think that this explains the sagging birth rate here in Japan?
Well, if we look at numbers, it's quite impressive. There are approximately 130 million Japanese living in Japan today, and it is expected that by the middle of the century, 2050, number will go to 80 million. And potentially 50 million at the end of the century. So it will be probably a very different Japan that we will see in 20 years from now, but maybe not so different from the Japan of the 70s, 60s, or 50s. Japan was, after all, 80 million inhabitants in the middle of the 20th century, just coming back to what Japan was in the previous century.
Tokyo has always been a big city.
It's always been a megalopolis.
Yeah. It's always been big. It used to be a million inhabited city, like when London and Paris was only like 500,000. In daily basis on the west side of Tokyo, where people kind of come in from the suburbs, you would have over 20 to 30 million commuters coming into the city daily. So it's like 8 times of Hong Kong, just on the move, 8 o'clock in the morning. The entire city is based on public transport. You have around 30 train operators and 120 lines, different lines.
Tokyo is immense. It's made up of wards and districts and villages and municipalities.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of the legal boundaries are there like any other city, I think. But then you have all these kind of quite small communities. Not small, I mean, we're talking big, but still, like in the scale. Yeah, well, in the scale of Tokyo, you have all these kind of small communities that then make the patchwork of the entire city. It's made of 23 wards, and every ward has a kind of a city hall, and every ward also has a mayor. Those 23 wards make part of the kind of the central Tokyo.
In addition to these 23 wards, Tokyo encompasses 26 cities, 3 towns, 1 village, and several islands.
If you look on a satellite map, basically you see city after city all the way to Yokohama. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at Yokohama either, so it just kind of flows down. So the only place where it stops is at the kind of waterfront. But like west, you can travel endlessly on a train that travels quite fast, and it's just just housing and buildings. And then you hit the mountains, and still there's like a lot of housing. So
there's not one major center in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Is it comprised of many downtowns?
Yeah, many downtowns or many cities. Every major train station, which would kind of encompass what I call a kind of a community or a city.
Rebuilt after a destructive earthquake in 1923, and again after the bombings of World War II, Tokyo doesn't have the vertical aspect generally found in large cities.
But you also understand that it's actually quite low-rise. It's not the image of New York, for example, or Chicago, or these kind of American cities, or even Shanghai, where there's lots of high-rise.
Is that because of the seismic condition of the city?
Historically, probably one reason. The other reason is that it's just kind of an organic city that just kind of grew larger and larger. And there was a rule to kind of keep buildings low. And then I think private developers also kind of suggest maybe we should make them higher because it's more feasible for business. And so they kind of propose, let's build a higher Tokyo. And actually the Roppongi Hills that we stand on now was one of the kind of starting points where Tokyo started to move inwards, being more compact. Now you can see high-rise buildings kind of just like mushrooms coming up.
Tokyo, being so densely populated, has the lowest average living space per person.
Yeah, it's quite tight, yeah. The quality of life, I wouldn't say goes down too much because it's small, right? People feel like I'd rather go to a neighborhood store which is conveniently next to me rather than going to a shopping mall or having to, take the bus or even drive to a supermarket.
It's the biggest city on earth, but it's still at a human scale.
Yeah, it's very human scale, and you can, if you like a neighborhood, you can also just be in that neighborhood and not go to all these kind of major hubs, I would say. Yeah.
Has the preservation of historic buildings been a challenge?
I think preservation is quite a different concept maybe in Asia, also in Japan.
I heard the lifespan of an average building is 26 years.
Yeah, I've been away now for about half a year, right? I come back feels like what Europe does in maybe 5 years happens in 6 months. So there's a lot of new things, but also a lot of things disappear. Now we're reaching the part where you see down to Yokohama.
Yeah.
And you see this massive
highway.
This highway going all the way through Shibuya and then down to Yokohama.
Behind its oversized avenues, Tokyo hides another reality. A few steps from the busiest intersections in the world lies a surprising intimacy, not unlike what you'd find in a small village.
So it's surprising you can be in the middle of a busy neighborhood and then all of a sudden turn the corner and find a charming alleyway.
You'll have a local public school here, and then on the other side you have someone's house, and then fashion shops.
It's lively in this small little alleyways.
Yeah.
The street address system here in Tokyo is very different than in the rest of the world.
Yeah. You don't have necessarily street names, actually.
You have the name of the block.
You have the name of the block or numbering of the block, and then the house number is based on the order of which when it was built.
So the house numbers aren't necessarily consecutive?
No, definitely not. It would be quite a...
Definitely not.
Yeah. It's a coincidence if that would happen, but if you tell a cab driver, taxi driver where, how to get here, usually... Nowadays, of course, they use all this GPS technology, but traditionally you would direct by landmarks. So university buildings or other kind of public or big institutions, perhaps. And then from there you would kind of scale down to where you want to go.
So is it functional?
Well, it's not dysfunctional. I mean, it works. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, and the mail, post, everything comes to your home.
I heard that cars drive an average of 18 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Every city should learn from this. I mean, it's cause and effect, but I think when cars are driving slow, it means that actually that people are opting public transport instead of maybe private cars.
New York. Today, 8.2 million people live in this remarkable city. Over the last 100 years, a child has been born here, on average, every 4.5 minutes. What sort of a place have they arrived in?
Yes, first light, New York City.
Over the next 24 hours, I intend to explore this town. I want to meet its people, experience some of its astonishing culture and diversity, and try to understand what really makes New York, New York. It's utterly crucial to the life of this town that Manhattan is an island. It's suspended between the Atlantic and the American continent.
It's estimated that 50% of everything that ever entered the United States of America has come through this gateway, through this port. That includes goods, but it also includes people.
And this is the view which, except of course for the modern skyscrapers, once greeted the greatest migration in human history. Having landed here, they became one nation under God. More than 15 million flags are made in the US every year. Early each morning, it's Adam Hett's job to start at the southern tip of Manhattan and hoist Old Glory across the city.
Okay, we got him perfect.
It's heavier than it looks.
Yeah, I know that.
How many flags are you responsible for, Adam?
But close to 73, 74.
73 or 4 flags?
From here to 14th Street.
Adam, what's happening for me now? Everywhere I look, I see flags. See, look, there's another flag over there.
New York has the most ethnically diverse population on the planet. There are more than 170 languages spoken in these 6 boroughs.
Where are you from originally?
I have no country now, all in the pieces.
But where are you from? What's it?
Used to be Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia?
Now it's 6th country. I come to this country a long time ago.
So you're a native New Yorker now?
Yeah, New Yorker, yeah.
Legend has it that in 1626, the entire island of Manhattan was bought by a Dutchman from a group of Native Americans for the equivalent of just $24.
Well, given that the place is now worth trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions, it was seen as rather a poor deal. But in fact, those Native Americans didn't actually own the island. The truth is, they were just passing through. And I think they rather enshrine the spirit of New York, which is to make a quick buck out of absolutely anything.
Hey, baby, jump over here when you do the ooby-dooby. I just gotta be there, ooby-dooby.
Over the river in Brooklyn, a family of Greek immigrants runs a thriving business, serving the very best of New York breakfasts.
What can I get you?
Let me go with a corned beef hash with 2 eggs.
At 8 a.m., no time of day is busier for the staff here at Tom's Diner.
Let me also get a chocolate egg cream.
Chocolate egg cream.
Sorry. Lawrence, can I give you an order? Corned beef hash, 2 eggs. This huge range of things that people like that. French toast,
they have a
French
lot
toast.
of options. They have Belgian waffles, they have French toast, they have pancakes of all kinds.
Yeah.
But here we have them, they're thicker.
You put a little bit more on top.
Exactly.
You put some fruit on it. You put some
fruit,
sugar on it. A lot of maple syrup.
A lot of maple syrup, like I tell you. Everything is derivative to make you happy, but not thin.
That's a waffle going through, isn't it?
Belgian waffles, French toasts, English muffins, they all sound like immigrants, but they are, of course, utterly American. Somewhere in my client's gargantuan breakfast order, I've managed to forget his most bizarre request.
Get excited. There you go. Chocolate syrup on top of that. There you go.
There you go.
You're hired.
And there's the chocolate.
Thank you so much.
The quantity of different things that are available. It's a feat of memory to rival a British taxi driver learning the knowledge, to learn all the extremes of carbohydrate, fat and sugar that an American in New York can eat for breakfast.
On the streets of Manhattan, the morning rush hour is reaching its fevered peak. But at Grand Central Terminal, it feels more like a stately dance. Dan Brooker, like me, loves this place. He takes me high above the main concourse. Built by America's wealthiest family, the Vanderbilts, this place is more like a temple than a terminal.
What an extraordinary view.
And passing through this main concourse every day are 700,000 people. To give you an idea, that's the entire population of San Francisco comes walking through here every day. And what's amazing is none of them bump into each other. They're all moving at a rapid pace, and they're not even brushing shoulders.
That's why it's like a city in itself, because a city is an opportunity for human beings to live in such close proximity to each other and go on with their own jobs and get on with their own life without bumping into each other.
Yes.
It's one of the great... We don't think of it like that. We don't realise how extraordinary that is. But that is the marvel of a city. And here it is. Here is a way of seeing it. It's so quiet. It doesn't even feel like a railway station. All the paraphernalia is sort of hidden away down tunnels. And you get this echoing stillness, and above you the heavens. Although a few days after it was opened, an amateur astronomer pointed out to Vanderbilt that all the constellations are back to front. They've been put up the wrong way round. And they investigated and found that the painter had got it all wrong. He'd had his picture upside down. So the line taken was that it was meant to be like this, that you were looking at the sky, not as a human being, but as if you were a god.
I had another surprise in store as Dan led me below the main concourse.
But you may notice something interesting down here. Look, why are these people facing into corners like that? We are literally in the middle of a secret right here. Here's why. You're going to get into one corner over there, and I'm going to get together. You're going to face dead in. Right.
If you ever want to have a private word in this city, this is the place to come, to whisper sweet nothings. Apparently, it's one of New York's favourite places to propose.
Now, Griff, do you know what people think that you're doing right now?
I can guess. I've just looked over at you and thought that people might be thinking I'm making use of a facility, which we're only using a whispering facility.
Dan, you're attracting attention there.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Dan tried his best. Unfortunately, I was already spoken for. During a lifetime, the average New Yorker throws away more than 600 times their own body weight. And with 8.2 million citizens, that's a lot of trash.
San Solo!
Clearing the streets of the city is the job of New York's sanitation department. It's a highly organised operation run along paramilitary lines.
Mejia! Here! Jones!
Here!
I'm joining the ranks of celebrity. Both Boy George and the fragrant Naomi Campbell before me have done time with the Department of Sanitation, though perhaps not as willingly. I'm going with Rob and Cyrus to clear 5 blocks on Manhattan's Upper West Side.
There's some dogger's best on this.
Oh, that's the best too.
You're just going to throw it in, this carpet?
Yeah, would you like to buy it?
You get on this job, a certain satisfaction about seeing it cleared, isn't there?
I remember being a little kid, when you see the big truck, you're like, woo, I can't wait to be a garbage man. Now, here I am. And I'm like, whoa.
This is relentless. I've only been doing it for about 5 minutes.
We see your muscles now.
Yeah. Whoa.
I now get why this city's garbage collectors are affectionately known as New York's strongest. Every day, they clear 50,000 tons of trash.
Straight in the...
Straight in there, baby.
Straight in?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Everything. Okay, I got it. Okay. There we go.
That lavatory bowl is beginning a long journey. It'll be transported by barge to New Jersey, crushed and compacted, and then loaded onto a train. It will travel an astonishing 300 miles to be buried in a massive landfill site in West Virginia. New York has always thought big. My own admiration for the Department of Sanitation is actually shared by the city itself. New York has an avenue to celebrate its firefighters, a street for its police force, and it must be the only city in the world to pay homage to its dustbin men.
They told me I could see New York in all its spreading strength and power from the city's highest spot on top, the famous Woolworth Tower.
The Woolworth Tower!
The Woolworth Tower!
Beat me, Daddy! Did you say the Woolworth Tower?
I won't beat you, but I said the wall.
I'm not really supposed to be in here because this is still very much a private skyscraper. This is the Woolworth Building, built by Frank W. Woolworth, paid for in cash to be the tallest building in the world in 1913. He wanted it at least to be taller than the Metropolitan Life Insurance Building because they'd once refused him a mortgage. And the reason it looks like a dowager's handbag is not because the place was built out of necessity, but because he wanted to show off. Woolworth wanted to have a bigger erection than any other tycoon in town. And just for a while, he did. Manhattan shot up. The city became the vertical metropolis we know today in a very few years indeed. It was not simply lack of space. High-rise was driven by high rents, towering ambitions, and most of all, enormous egos. New York has 4,493 skyscrapers, more than any other city in the world. But there's still one that stands out amongst the giants. The Empire State Building is 103 stories high. It was constructed in the 1930s during the depths of the American Depression. Its steel frame shot up at an astonishing 4 stories a week.
That is very, very perpendicular. I don't suffer at all from vertigo, but every now and again you look over, and every now and again a little wave of imagination comes over you, and you just have to grip on, just to reassure yourself that that's solid. I find myself, as I walk down the canyons of New York, and you look up and you think, what's it all for? Who's up there? What are they using all that space to do? Because these buildings seem to dwarf human beings. It's no wonder that this is the city that had to invent Superman and Batman.
The centre of this one is probably the most influential there has ever been, but it's no bigger than the whole of London's parks put together. Ah, yes. It's Paris. Small, intense, but full of flavour. What are the ingredients of this astonishing creation? Over the course of an ordinary Parisian day, I want to investigate the ideas that have made this city the way it is. I want to burrow into it, to try to get beneath its skin. I want to meet its citizens and their eccentric obsessions, and by experiencing its astonishing traditions, get to grips with its appeal. Why do people adore Paris? And I think I'd better start at first light here in the Place de la Concorde.
Well, this is a very good time of the morning, so they tell me to come here to the Place de Concorde to see the lengths that Paris will go to look perfect. 7.5 kilometres. In fact, that's how long the Triumphal Way is from the front door of the Louvre, along here, past this gigantic obelisk, and on, up here, for another 4 kilometres, on, up the Champs-Élysées there, to the top of the hill, through, straight through, the middle of the Arc de Triomphe there.
What a magnificent triumphal way, and it would be perfection, except that this arch, the brand new square one at La Défense, is not in line with the others. For some reason, it was built off-centre.
The architects, the state, the people of Paris wanted perfection. But there's always one awkward bugger who refuses to conform, so the rest of them will have something to talk about. And that is the glory of Paris.
Paris has probably had more ardent admirers than any other place on earth. From the Roman Emperor Julian, who called it his beloved city, to Adolf Hitler, who in 1940 wrote that he had always longed to visit Paris, having just done so with his army and 40,000 tanks. It was considered too beautiful to bomb and survived the Second World War intact when many other places were razed to the ground. Paris is exquisite in scale and content. It has over 40,000 public monuments. New York may boast bigger, taller, London more extensive, but Paris knows it has the finest. It's the attention to detail that makes this city tick. You can't just make bread here, you've got to make the world's best bread. At the Poilâne Bakery, that means making it by hand.
A little bit of flour.
Voila.
There we are, voila. Now I'm going to go and strangle it.
The kneaded dough has to be moved to a proving bin to rise. And it has to be done to schedule, or the bread will spoil. French bread is special because of its simplicity. The law dictates it must be made from flour, yeast, salt and water and nothing else, except perhaps the odd drop of sweat.
Felix wants me to hurry up because we have to do all this before daybreak, as it were. This is actually quite...
C'est bien là.
C'est bien, oui.
Even the oven is hard work.
Voilà.
The bakery uses wood.
Okay.
The flames have to reach 300 degrees centigrade.
One more.
We're not making baguettes. They were a Viennese invention. We're making traditional French country bread. Round, slightly tough, and beyond compare. In this city, 70% of the bread is made by hand. In Britain, 3%.
It's just continuous physical action. It's hard work making bread.
With no preservatives in it, fresh bread has to be collected twice a day, so Parisians have to work to get hold of the stuff as well. You queue for good bread in Paris. Luckily, there's a bread shop on average every 100 metres. Lack of bread was a cause of the French Revolution, so I hope I've made enough for this lot. As the markets open, Paris is preparing herself for another day showing off to the world. For its size, Paris is the world's biggest spender on keeping up appearances. As I negotiate the centre of town, I have to jump over a puddle, but it's not a casual puddle.
Actually, it hasn't been raining. There are two water systems in Paris. One for drinking, and one which was the old water system, which they just left. And now they use for cleaning the streets. And every now and again they turn a switch and it starts pouring out of the curb. It's a major industry, keeping Paris clean.
And there's a lot more to it than swilling out the gutters. On the left bank, in the east of the city, I'm joining an elite unit of sanitary engineers.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Bonjour.
They have their spies at all the major monuments, with specific instructions to move into action at a moment's notice. This is the Crack Graffiti Eradication Squad de Paris.
It's been estimated that graffiti artists hit 300,000 square metres of Paris surface every year. 40% of the houses have been tagged, and in 2004 there was a concerted campaign to write advertising kills on every single billboard in the city.
We skirt the Panthéon and rush past Notre Dame to get down to the banks of the Seine to find our offending daub. Some years ago, Parisian politicians needed to debate whether graffiti was an eyesore or a form of free expression. They decided any graffiti should be removed immediately from all monuments.
And the other priorities are politics, which have to go like that, and racism. No racism. So the rest of the graffiti, if you're in the mind to come and decorate Paris, you could get away art, it would stay for a bit longer, but those things, we had to be here straight off.
Michel starts up the machine, and I get to grips with the blaster.
How very utterly satisfying this is. I'll get one of these for where I live in London. I can only give a Gallic gesture of satisfaction. I can... Bravo!
It's now 7:30, and I take to the river going west. I don't want to be late for school, and I'm heading to the world's tallest classroom. The River Seine is the reason why the city of Paris is here. 200 years ago, Paris was the second biggest port in France. It's still one of the biggest river ports in the world, but somehow manages to be a little more alluring than Felixstowe Docks. It's rush hour for the 3 million students who live here. I'm joining a school trip to the premier étage. The Eiffel Tower dominates this town, as indeed it was meant to. It was built in 1889 to convincingly demonstrate that France was the top of her class.
They are afraid of falling.
I know, me too.
Today, Madame Bertrand will teach her pupils from Lyon the significance of the world's largest Meccano model, with special reference to its 2.5 million rivets.
What Madame is probably not going to tell them is that all the intellectuals, all the writers, absolutely hated this tower when it went up. Guy de Maupassant, the novelist, used to come here and have lunch every day. And when he was asked why, he said, because having lunch here is the only place in Paris that I can't see the damn thing.
But it didn't stay unpopular for long. 10 years after it was built, 50 million visitors, or 1/5 of the whole population of Europe, came to the 1900 World Fair to have a look at the thing. It has remained the world's most visited attraction ever since. The Petit Palais, the Grand Palais, the Musée d'Orsay and the Trocadero were also all built for these mammoth expositions, and all have stayed to adorn the city.
They were meant to demonstrate not just that France was perfect at food, wine and fashion, but also that France was perfect at science, manufacturing and engineering.
For all its obvious visibility, the real wonder of this place is hidden away out of sight. 120 years ago, the lift mechanism was hailed as a miracle of French engineering. Incredibly, it's still faithfully lifting and lowering, and I've been invited to keep it lubricated. Once a week, a special grease has to be applied to the mechanism while it's still moving. It's boiling hot and it smells incredible, and that's because it's molten mutton fat, and it gets everywhere.
You just get the impression that sooner or later somebody's going to slip on the mutton grease and into the machinery. Dearie me. Here we go. More fat. Applying the mutton fat. Whee! Good stuff. Greasing the wheels. No doubt, if I was a proper Frenchman, what I'd do now is take a big scoop of that and spread it on a piece of bread and have it for my lunch.
The tower was meant to be temporary, but stuck around as a symbol of French pride in their engineering prowess. It also came to symbolise French pride in their military prowess.
During the First World War, the Germans came to within 50 miles of Paris, and the Eiffel Tower was used as a giant lookout post to direct the French troops, who were ferried to the battle in Parisian taxis. This had two results. First of all, it made Parisian taxi drivers rather rich because, well, 50 miles is a long way and they charged the full fare. And secondly, it turned the Eiffel Tower into a monument of victory.
So, the tower celebrates yet another victory for the French army. As if there wasn't quite enough of that sort of thing around here anyway. The west of Paris is dominated by grand military buildings and vast parade grounds.